Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our webinar, Bidirectional Text Part 2, Delving into Bidi. My name is Ilango Cheran, and I'll help make introductions for today's event, and I'll be going over some housekeeping items. As a reminder, this session is being recorded, and it'll be posted on the Unicode Consortium YouTube channel. We've received questions in advance, and we'll address the ones that are of most interest on this topic of Bidi, and we'll be taking additional questions as time allows. Please submit your questions for the team either using the chat or the Q&A feature. The next hour will be handled by our Bidi experts, starting with a short presentation, providing some background information, followed by a Q&A period to address those questions, as we mentioned. Let me introduce you to our webinar team. Adil Allawi, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Adil Allawi. I've been working with Bidi for coming on 40 years now, from the early implementations of the Apple II going forwards to supporting Apple with Arabic support on the Mac OS and then on iPhone. I have taken a bunch of projects and made them right to left. I'll showcase one of those here when I answer one of the questions, and have worked a lot in Bidi and fonts in general, widely. Yeah.
Thank you. Ayman Al-Dakhle, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Ilango. Hello, everyone. My name is Ayman. I'm going to give you a brief also about my career. I started my career in the late 80s, and I joined the few people, probably Adil was one of them, in the industry in a mission to Arabize computers at the time. In 1990, I joined Microsoft to work on enabling their early DOS products, and worked there for 33 years, and I just retired last December. I have worked in many areas at Microsoft, but the most relevant area to today's discussion is that I worked on enabling Windows and Office applications, Word in particular, for bidirectional languages. I stayed involved with Unicode, and today I serve on the board of directors of the Unicode Consortium. I hope that I can be of help to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Rusbe Pornarde is the vice chair of the Unicode Script Encoding Working Group. Karen Dawson is a community engagement and events manager at Unicode. And I'm Ilango Cheran, the vice chair of the community engagement team at Unicode. All right, let's get started. Ayman, over to you.
Thank you. So I want to start by pointing to part one. This is part two. So in part one, Richard Ishida talked about the Bidi algorithm, the basics of Bidi algorithm. In fact, it's called the basics, but it dug deep, and it was a great deep dive into the Bidi algorithm. So to me, I just wanted to summarize the Bidi algorithm. I'm not going to go into the details, but to me, the Bidi algorithm was a great way early on to make sure that Bidi text or text with multiple directions show consistently across all the systems. The way I think of it simply is the Unicode characters include all the characters from all the languages of the world. Some of these characters are strong left to right, they should go left to right. Some of these characters are strong right to left, they should go right to left. But there are lots of characters that are neither, or they are shared by both. Then how do you lay out these? And the standards go into the details of how to lay out or all of these characters that are in between. And the way to think of it, there are heuristics and decisions that you have to make to guess what the user intent is for these characters. And after you're done, sometimes you don't end up with the desired result. That's why Unicode also defined control characters. And again, part one of the Bidi algorithm talks in details about these control characters. These control characters help users make sure that the layout meets what they intended this sentence or the text to represent or to be laid out. Control characters are, and again, I'm going to try to answer some of the questions that were asked, online. Control characters are complex to use for many users. Like normal users are not meant to insert these characters in as they type text and a message or whatever. Control characters should be hidden, which makes them hard to edit. If they're visible, they impact the readability of the text. So there are some issues with these control characters that developers need to be aware of. Another problem that I want to point out, control characters can impact the data integrity. Unicode specifies how to deal with them. Unfortunately, we have tons of systems that when you insert these control characters, they don't treat them correctly. So my recommendation is for developers to be, first of all, totally aware of the Bidi algorithm. The Bidi algorithm, no matter how you think of it as complex, it's an algorithm. It still fits in 20 pages. You can read it. You can understand it. As a developer, it's great to understand it and understand how these Unicode characters are supposed to be used, and help users, if you're building software, if you're building website, help users see Bidi by understanding how to use them, when to use them for Bidi users. For the purpose of this talk in particular, I want to show you, I work for Microsoft, so I'm going to show you two Microsoft applications, Notepad and Word, and I want to show you how Bidi was implemented in these two applications. So I'm going to share my screen. I hope that I don't have anything personal showing on my screen, but so can you see my screen now? Okay, so the first application that I'm opening now is Notepad. So Notepad is plain text. It doesn't have any properties for character runs. So it has to follow the Unicode algorithm. I'm going to use Richard Ishida's example. It's a simple example, but I want to dig a little deeper. So the example was the title is, and now the title is in Arabic. I switched the keyboard to Arabic. If you can see my keyboard switching is at the top. I switched the keyboard to Arabic. I'm going to type the title as the user wanted this title to be. And I'm going to type, it's for those of you who understand Arabic, it's, the first word is muftah. And then when I press space, notice what happened. The space went to the far right of the line. Why? Because the space is defined as neutral, and it is surrounded by strong right to left from one end and end of line, which is left to right. And that's why it gets classified as left to right. So it goes to the far right of the line. If I continue typing and I type an Arabic and another Arabic text, now the space got fixed and said, oh no, it's surrounded by both strong right to left. That's why it should be right to left. So I'm going to continue the sentence or the title. And so I type the title. The title includes an exclamation mark at the end. I type the exclamation mark. Same story as with space. The exclamation mark went to the far right of the line because exclamation mark is in a left to right context, line context, and is surrounded by strong right to left and end of line. If the example has actually even more, I switch the keyboard to English and type in Arabic. So notice that this is not what the user intended. The user intended the exclamation mark to be at the end of the Arabic text, which is to the far left of the Arabic text. Again, as we said, Unicode offers these control characters. So in Notepad, I'm going to go to the end of the right after the exclamation mark, and I'm going to insert a Unicode, special Unicode characters called right to left mark. Probably, again, it's described in more details. And what that does, it's a zero width character that is invisible that says, make this exclamation mark sandwiched between strong right to left and lay it out in right to left. Now the line got fixed as the user intended it, but it required that insertion of that control characters. I'm going to switch to Word and show you how this was the behavior of Bidi in Word was implemented. Now, Word is a higher level protocol. So the way it implements the Bidi algorithm, it first it takes input from the user and applies properties based on what the input of the user is. So for example, if I am switching the keyboard to English and I type that title is, Now, this piece of text is just one block of text that is left to right. The user typed it in left to right, and it's marked with a right to left flag, meaning this is a right to left. Now, if I switch the keyboard to Arabic and I start typing the same text, notice that when I type the space went to the left of the character because there was a Bidi or a right to left flag applied. The user intent is right to left, so we kept it right to left. Even if you type any neutral characters, I'm typing them in right to left. So it sustains the right to leftness of the characters. So now I type معايير الويب. Notice now I want to put the exclamation mark. I'm still in right to left. So I put an exclamation mark, and that made it right to left exactly as the user intended. Now I can switch the keyboard to English and continue the sentence. So if you think about it, what you see on the screen is literally 3 blocks of characters. One block is left to right, one block is right to left, and one block is left to right. Now, this is great. You might say, oh, wow, this is easy to use. And we got lots of comments from users that it's much easier to use, much easier to write Bidi. But here's one problem. This breaks the Unicode algorithm. This does not follow the Unicode algorithm as a plain text piece. So for example, if I take it and I go to Notepad, which only understands plain text, I'm going to delete everything. And I say paste, it did it again, right? So the way this was solved, and this is probably a way to tell some of you, how to author or how to get these characters inserted. Word has this option, and follow me. You go to Options and Advanced and scroll to copy and paste. There is one option that says Add Control Characters in Cut and Paste. Now, if you go back and copy this piece of text and go to Notepad, let's delete this one, and paste, it's going to show it exactly as it was in Word. How did that magic happen? If you go and say show control characters, Word inserted control characters to strongly define all the blocks and made it look the same. Now, the message I wanted to say about this is, as a developer, try to get from the user any intent and integrate it into how you show text and how you allow them to edit. The more you do that, the easier the software becomes for users to use. Don't rely on users to insert these control characters. Try your best to either insert it for them or provide UI that allows them to easily and in an understandable way, they can put the text in a way that they can read and consume. Just one last comment. It came up in the last discussion or in part 1, where some systems try to take a shortcut and store right to left characters in visual order. I wanted to say, please, please, please never do that. Text should always be stored in logical order in the backing store. It's much easier. No matter how you think it's going to simplify your visual display of the characters, it's going to damage so many things when it comes to data integrity, from sorting to searching to many things, to even display. So always rely on storage of logical characters and display them in visual. We made one mistake in Microsoft a long time ago. Someone tried to make a shortcut and implemented table cells in visual order, means stored the tables, right to left tables in visual order, and that broke everything. We had to do a re-release and fix it. So unexpected issues can arise if you store things in visual order. Thank you, and I will be happy to answer questions.
Okay. Adil, over to you.
Thank you. That was enlightening, Ayman. And when I did the Bidi implementation in Pages, we copied your high-level protocol to make sure that Word documents had full fidelity for right to left. So it's really valuable advice, this. One of the things I wanted to focus on is not so much on the Bidi algorithm, but on the user interface with Bidi. And I wanted to go through a few of the web-based Bidi implementations to show the approach to this. This came up in the questions we're saying, well, there's one question saying, where do I start to create a Bidi application? And the other one is, what do you do with styles and actual markup? Because you have Bidi in both. And hopefully I can address those two areas. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, or my Safari. Hopefully you can see this. So what I'm showing here is a project called Google Web Toolkit. That was one of the first Bidi web interfaces I worked on. I actually was working with Google on this to make this right to left. And this is a showcase. So Google Web Toolkit was one of the first, let's say, full user interface systems for web, like you have React now or Angular. Google Web Toolkit was one of the first of that kind. And it has a very rich set of user interface items. The one I'll show here is the menu, where it will bring up menus. And one of the jobs you'll have is, oh, I've got this left to right user interface. How do I make it right to left? And this is a really interesting area to look at. So if I now switch this to Arabic, you'll see this is right to left. And some of the complications you'll find in an interface is just bringing up a menu here. These items here are absolutely positioned, but the coordinate system is left to right, even though you're going right to left. So sometimes you even have to know the width of this item before it actually gets put onto the screen. So I'll go into approaches to save you from doing that, but to have a look about this. The way we handle the right to leftness here is that the right to left markup here for the user interface is done as CSS, so as styles. So if I inspect this item here, hang on, and I'm just going to bring up my inspector and inspect, here we go. And we inspect that, you can see that the padding, it has a 40px on this side here, which is on the right. And that is significant because you want it there. So and you notice we have a separate, if you see here, it says clean RTL.css. We have actually, when you switch directions, you switch the CSS. And this is why it's important to, when you're doing interface for right to left, put all the right to left information in the style, because when you're switching direction, you want to just switch out the styles. You don't want to redo the whole markup. Whereas if you're doing text, which is meaningful text, let's say like the contents of Wikipedia, the content text, you want to do that in markup, because, or let's say HTML directly, because when you switch out the styles, you still want to keep the same meaning. And that's where you have to visualize the difference between using styles and using markup. So this is one area. If we look at a more modern UI, let's say, which is React, same kind of drop downs here. And I inspect this. Now, have a look at the way it handles this gap here. So if you notice the orange square, and I select that. Okay, just a moment. And I will look. Oh, here we go. Bring up the markup for this. And you notice that for this drop down here, they're using now an interesting, let's say, relatively new addition to CSS, which is margin inline start. So instead of just using absolute right and left, there is now a new, again, relatively new piece to CSS that's now supported in all the modern browsers, which is called logical properties. And this means instead of saying margin right here, it actually puts the 20 pixels in the starting part, which depending on the direction now. And that saves you. So if I now switch this to right to left, it saves you actually having to, oops, sorry, I lost the menu. Just a second. It is a drop down. And yeah, here we go. Bring the drop down. So it saves you actually having to specify the margin position differently again. So that actually, I won't go into this in more detail because I just lost the place I was on this screen. But it makes it that much easier to do this. And so I would strongly recommend looking at logical properties. But when you're converting an existing UI over to right to left, you may still have to deal with the swapping over of lefts and rights in CSS. And there are a lot of useful tools to do this. So for example, here is one called RTL CSS, which is just an online converter for switching between left to right and right to left UI. So I can type in, for example, margin left for PX, and you'll see that it will convert it to margin right. So it's a nice way of just taking bits of CSS, converting it and getting the right to left version. But if I enter here, margin inline start, you'll see that it actually keeps it the same. And this is really useful to have these kinds of converters. You'll find these on various GitHub projects. We can actually link to these afterwards if you're interested. One other thing I'd like to cover is when you're handling input. So here's pages and one area where you're dealing with text. So if I'm just typing in English, great, it stays there. But now I've got a blank screen and I'm about to type in Arabic. I've just switched my keyboard to Arabic. What it should do is really switch the direction immediately. And these are the kinds of things where you should really think about your user's intent. When they see a blank screen, they're starting to type in a right to left language. They want the direction to switch over. And these are things I can answer in the Q&A if people are interested about how that works. But that's the area I wanted to cover. Thank you. So this is, by the way, this is the CSS logical properties document. Again, very well worth reading.
All right. Thank you, Adil. Thank you both. So now we can move to the Q&A. So presenters, if you can, have your cameras on or at least have your profile picture visible if you can. In this Q&A, we received many questions in advance and we'll address these questions during the webinar. We'll be taking additional questions as time allows, but just please remember to ask questions relevant to the topic of this event. And as mentioned earlier, you can ask questions in the chat or the Q&A. Our time is limited, so I apologize in advance if we can't get to some of your questions. Okay. So the first question is, where do you start in programming a website that serves both left to right languages like English and German and a right to left language such as Arabic? And this is from Daniel Verning.
So I think I covered this with the presentation I showed of just taking something like Google Web Toolkit or React and making that support right to left. I would strongly recommend looking at open source projects that handle right to left already and just look at the way they deal with that in their code. So Web Toolkit and React are both open source projects. You can see that. And the browser inspector is your friend. You see how these examples are done and you apply these as you're working. Then when you're talking about English and German and Arabic translations, I think that's an area where, yeah, localization is its own topic in its own right. That's going to be worthwhile for a future webinar.
Okay, thank you. The next question. Should the Bidi markers be implemented by translators or by engineers using a code library? And this is submitted by Lin Hu.
I think I tried to answer that also in my part. I highly recommend that developers, make it easier at least to insert them and make it go along with what the user intent is. So it could be explicit, it could be implicit. You could allow them to say, insert embedding or start an embedding in the UI so that they put a sentence within a sentence. Or it could be implicit, meaning I know from the user, like for example, the one that Adil showed, I know that they're typing in right to left, so maybe I should make the line direction right to left. That's kind of an implicit way of showing it.
One area I'd jump in to add here is it's useful for engineers to implement them when they're talking about inserting a variable. So for example, you have a string that includes a username. Having the isolates put around the username, for example, beforehand by the engineers helps the translators to get those isolates beforehand rather than having to insert them themselves. So yeah, variables, it's really useful for engineers to do this. But yes, translators as well. So it both work.
Yeah, something I would also add to what Ayman and Adil said is that there are APIs in some of the major vendor software and operating systems that help with these things. So for example, in Android, there's something called Bidi wrapping. If you search for it, you will find the API, which basically does what Adil was just describing, is basically an abstraction layer that allows you to say, this part that I'm inserting, that is a username or a sentence or something that's added by the user, is an insertion. And you need to the software can then figure out what the right Bidi controls to insert at that moment are, without the developer being extremely familiar with the Bidi algorithm. So if you're not that familiar with the Bidi algorithm, but you still want to do the right thing for your user, you may want to look at these things. So for example, the Bidi wrapping.
Okay, thank you. The next question. So I think this is from this is the intent from the submitter, who is Manabu Okuhara. How well do others support Bidi languages? And what are the best applications for Bidi now? So I think this is more about how well is Bidi supported across the various applications that we come across in our day-to-day lives and industry. And what's your take on that?
Well, I'd say this is the great thing about Unicode and the Unicode Bidi algorithm is everyone implements the same algorithm. And we should assume that you get very similar results across different platforms, different browsers.
Are there some applications that do better or worse at implementing this?
But
you know,
yeah, go on.
So, sorry, I wanted to say something else. When you say applications, sometimes I don't know if the question was applications or components of a system. So, for example, editors in systems, they all support Bidi. I don't know. I did not run. Maybe I'm not using any of the obscure operating systems, but all operating systems now implement and support Bidi. I would say, from the question, just to be cautious, I would say do not implement your own solution. For example, do not implement an editor. Do not start implementing something from scratch. Look at the existing components or even open source systems that implement the Bidi algorithm and use it. Do not try to do it yourself. Like from the question, I sense as if what was the best example so I can copy it. And I would avoid copying it unless you really have to, unless you're creating your own complex editor, for example.
So our next question is, should we use styles? And I think this is in a web context, so that might mean CSS. So should we use styles, or should we hard code left to right, right to left when creating HTML for web pages? And this was submitted by Don Fernoy.
Right. And I think I covered that in my presentation. That was one of the ones that inspired why I was writing. Yeah. CSS, where you've got user interface, hard-coded HTML, where you've got actual content. And think of it as what happens if the CSS is not there? Does the thing still have the same meaning? Or what happens if you need to switch direction? Does the style help do that? And that's a simple question you ask yourself, and then the answer comes clearly.
The next question, I want to learn more about Bidi in video games. This is from Ruth Granados Garcia.
One of my projects that I'm still proud of doing was actually getting Farmville and right to left. I don't know if people still remember Farmville, but I'm kind of responsible for that, supporting Arabic. And that's an interesting combination of localization. You need to have showy fonts, really nice looking fonts, and you need to get those working in game systems that weren't really developed for right to left. It's a challenge. And I would say the most important thing I've seen that is get yourself really good local testers, because the amount of times I've seen bad Bidi in video games, it's painful. That's really what it's about.
Thank you.
But great fonts,
Mm-hmm.
and deal with these strange systems.
Next is it's more of a statement, but maybe you can just speak to the topic. And the topic is handling confusables and use of zero width characters. And maybe whoever wants to speak to this, maybe just briefly describe what a confusable is, because that's more of a Unicode lingo term. And this is from Vainatia Koratkar.
I don't know if I understand where the question is. I talked about how control characters can be confusing. If you're a developer, you should be able to see these control or insert them. I mean, there's a buffer that you can play with, and you can insert them and use them without confusion. They can be confusing in text because they are zero width. So as you move the cursor hits twice without you knowing. What I do personally, I rely on selection as I go. So I move the cursor and select and take that, copy and paste if I want to examine that character visually. But other than that, yeah, there is no easy way or an editor that provides an easy way to select them visually. I think Richard showed an editor where you can manipulate all of these characters in a much easier way than Notepad. Notepad has this right click, the context menu to insert them, and I find it confusing. I think trying to use an app that explores these characters is a much better way.
Here we have a question from the Q&A. Is there a way to detect when a user has changed their input language to a right to left language in a browser input field or some other editable element in the browser? And this is from Gregory Beaver.
Okay, that's a really good question. And it has pained me a lot. So when I showed you an example in Pages where we were taking input in English, blank screen, it was left to right. When you typed in Arabic, it goes right to left. So that's from what I showed you. To handle that, because we have our own word processor implementation, was, let's say, challenging. So one of the things is the web browser will not tell you what keyboard you're typing in. So what we had to do was implement a very small finite state algorithm that was just like a state table that was saying, what's the next character being typed? And then if we see the next character is right to left, we go ahead and say, oh, yes, then that's a right to left direction. Now, the problem was knowing what is a right to left character in a web browser, because you can't just ask JavaScript. So we actually implemented a mini version of the Bidi character properties algorithm so that we could quickly get the character properties in JavaScript, know that this is an actual right to left character, and then say, hey, we're right to left, we can go ahead. You don't want to do that. So the modern way, if it's just a simple input string, at least according to the W3C recommendation, is to use dir equals auto on the input itself. in which case the input bar should automatically switch direction depending on the content of the input. Having said that, I've tried it. It doesn't work in all cases, but that's the recommended way.
The next question is, I'm interested in deeply understanding the Bidi algorithm. And this is from Albrecht Dreiheller. I know that this answer could be as detailed as you want it to be, right? It's as detailed as the Bidi algorithm itself. But maybe what might help is, in addition to a link that we can provide that points to it, what are some ways that someone learning about it more deeply should approach learning about the algorithm?
I can try to answer some of it. If you want to deeply, deeply understand it, and I promise you, there are not many people in the world who understand it completely. It's a very large and complex algorithm that you usually do not need to know it at a very deep level unless you actually want to implement it. And for that, there's also various open source implementations. It's implemented on the various platforms. I would recommend against trying to re-implement it again, unless you're writing one of those platforms. Even then, there are implementations such as FreeBidi, spelled FRIBIDI, which is an open source implementation that you can use in your own software. So the best approach for going very deep is reading the actual algorithm itself. The next best is, if you want to familiarize yourself with it, but not go very, very deep, Richard Ishida has a lot of various online documents that go into Bidi, but not through all of the full depth. So I think he just pasted some of them in the chat. So those are what I would recommend that you actually start with.
Thank you. That's great. And then to find, I guess, details of the algorithm itself, that would be a Unicode technical report.
It's called Unicode Standard Annex number 9. I actually pasted it in chat. I can paste the link again.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rusme. The next question, are there any new changes to the Bidi algorithm that have arisen to support new use cases? And this is from Patrick Chu.
I think Rusbe, again, is the best qualified to answer this.
Okay, I can try. So the last major changes that there were in the Bidi algorithm happened quite a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And that was with the introduction of the Bidi isolate characters that Richard talked about in the previous session, and also the Bidi parentheses algorithm, which was based on something Microsoft had done in their software, and they thought it improves the user experience. Both of those were relatively small changes in a way that they didn't affect most user text in any way. Microsoft's kind of Bidi parentheses were really trying to take care of an issue that the algorithm hadn't addressed from the beginning. And the isolates were completely new ideas, basically from then Google engineers, that was trying to fix the Bidi embeddings. We do not expect, honestly, we do not expect any more further important changes to the Bidi algorithm. The Bidi algorithm as it is already very, very complex. And we don't want to make it even more complex or add more instability to the algorithm. What has happened since then, since those two changes, are occasional clarifications, things like very, very edge cases that were not very clear in the algorithm. We specified how to fix them. But generally, don't expect any further changes than those I mentioned.
And maybe you can say if there's anything further. Maybe you've already covered the next question, which is, The last update to the Unicode Bidi algorithm was related to paired brackets. How do we improve other scenarios moving forward? And this was submitted by Gilad Almosino.
So the idea is do not try to do the innovation at the Unicode Bidi algorithm level. If you want to do innovation and make the life of users easier, and in Bidi there's always ways to make the life of the user easier, try to do that innovation in a higher level protocol or in your software at a level that basically treats the Bidi algorithm as a black box. So basically, assume the Bidi algorithm is fixed and frozen forever, and try to figure out what you can do in a layer above it, basically, for example, by inserting the right format controls in your software to take care of things properly. Microsoft Word has always been a good example of an easier user interface, as Ayman just showed. You basically can do things that are compatible with the Bidi algorithm, but basically add an additional layer that can make the life of the user easier. I think Ayman and Adil may also have to add something.
No, that's actually very good way to describe it, Ruzbeh. And I would add, like, as I started talking, the whole story of Bidi algorithm is we're dealing with plain text. So a lot of study, it has been around for a long time, that a lot of study went in to make sure that we provide the best guess or the best classification for these characters. I was involved in the parentheses addition, and the parentheses addition, even that one, like the reason why I still thought it was a good thing to add, even though it broke existing text, is that most of the open and close parentheses that existed in our localization, for example, always added a right to left marker to make it look correct, right? So the implicit way of saying we're going to make that easier helped a lot. And even with that, I was hesitant to say, we're changing the Bidi algorithm. We're changing existing text. Existing text is going to look different, right? So I bet you any other change that's going to happen, there will be tons of consideration to all the existing algorithm that exists so far. So do not think of it as software that we're going to evolve or anything. And exactly as Ruzbeh said, the innovation should happen at a higher level protocol.
The next question is, how are emojis integrated into bidirectional text, and how can the reader perceive them? This is from Inam Jafel.
I can try to answer that. Basically, there are mostly considered symbols. And as for the Bidi algorithm, they're considered mostly, again, not all of them, the flags are a little different, but most of them are considered neutral symbols. So they would be treated similarly to a lot of other neutral characters, like the exclamation mark, like the @ sign, etc., in a way that if you have a few of them that go after each other, in left to right text, they're gonna go left to right. In right to left text, they're gonna go right to left. Now, how they're gonna be interpreted, that's a whole different issue. A right to left user may think of them as a certain way. Even a person who speaks a different right to left language may think of them as a different way when they are right to left or left to right. Generally, our approach is at the Unicode Consortium is we do not try to assign any special meaning to emoji or to their order. So basically, when you see a sequence in right to left, a user may interpret it a certain way or they may not. And that's really in the perception of the user. We do not try to do any special magic, any special kind of behavior so that when, for example, when somebody switches an emoji sequence from right to left to right, some meaning is kept or anything like that. The idea is basically when an emoji sequence is displayed right to left, it's a different sequence and it will have different interpretations.
Yeah, one of the things I would add there is for things like social media use or transferring messages from one social media to another, The ideal case would be to keep the original direction of the message that gets translated. How that's done is a bit more complex to answer, but definitely one message that has a certain set of emojis in one direction, if the right to left direction is different, could actually portray the opposite meaning. And that's where it's important to maintain that direction.
The next question is Bidi a characteristic of the script? Is it a characteristic of the language, or is it a characteristic of the combination of the two? I'm not sure who this question is from, but thank you for the question.
I can try to answer that again too. Basically, direction is a property of writing, property of the script. So several languages have different writing systems. For example, Kurdish can be written in Latin, can be written in Arabic. When it's written in Arabic, it's right to left, and basically when you add the numbers, it becomes Bidi. When it's written in Latin, it's left to right, and you probably don't need to care about Bidi. So generally, yes, it's the writing, it's a property of the script. And of course, in practice, languages have a preference of what script you want to write them in. Arabic is typically written in the Arabic script, which is right to left. But generally, you can think of it as a property of the script. The other thing I would add is some historical scripts also wrote in two different directions, like Greek, for example, or hieroglyphs. They had both left to right and left to right directions. So that just makes it interesting.
For a practical point, think about you're marking up HTML. You could say HTML lang equals AR, and it will imply that the following markup is going to be direction right to left to start with. So it's better to be explicit about the direction, regardless of the language as well, if you're thinking of markup.
Is there any idea or plan to generalize this support so that by adding a standard, all languages using the Arabic script can be supported? This is from Dolan.
I would go back to what I was talking about in the idea of, what was it again? CSS logical properties. In a sense, that is a new standard for CSS markup that should be the same markup regardless of direction, or rather, you can specify the direction and that markup will then do the same things. I think that would be a relevant answer to this, but otherwise, generalize the support. I mean, that's what logical properties does.
Yeah, generally, a good software, for example, software made by a lot of the major software vendors, Microsoft, Apple, Google, is written in a way and architectured in a way that support for different languages in it shouldn't be that difficult, except for basically adding locale information, which can be found in the CLDR project, Unicode CLDR project. Generally, if you are doing internationalization properly, if you're doing Unicode properly, your support for, say, Kurdish can basically piggyback over your support for Arabic. It was only like the old days that people would just go and hack Arabic in, and they say, I don't care about Persian, I don't care about Urdu, I don't care about anything else. These days, major software vendors basically implement Unicode based on, for example, Unicode character properties. Unicode character properties would not distinguish between Arabic or Kurdish characters. All of them would have some properties, and the modern software would trust those properties and rely on those properties to properly, for example, render your Kurdish or Arabic text. So the best advice is do not try to hack in one language or a couple of languages to your software. Instead, try to be neutral, language neutral, and use Unicode properties and things such as that in order to do your software properly. And as I would say, a lot of at least major software providers are doing that. And if you're writing your own software, I would recommend that you do that too.
The next question. Ayman, can you show again in Word what you did to keep the Bidi control characters in the copied text? And this is from Manuel Soto Pico.
Okay, I'm going to quickly share my screen back again. And I hope that what I did here can explain it. So this is the last pasted text that I showed, this one here, with the markers. So if I break it down the way Word did it, this is the English text with a space, followed by a strong right to left, and then the right to left text, followed by a strong right to left. So it's kind of wrapping the strong right to left when I switch the keyboard, wrapping that segment in right to left markers, and then switch again to left to right markers to ensure that the last segment starts with left to right.
Thank you. Let's see. Are there available documentation that describe the expected display for structured text, such as path name and XPath and etc., that contain right to left characters or names? And this is from Michael Buedo.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Is that a question that was submitted in the Q&A for this session, or?
Yeah, this is from Q&A.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe we can come back. And this is maybe if we get some clarification, we can come back to it. But let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is a bit of a long one. We use a translation manager for content. The content stored as text in JSON files using the ICU message format to represent them. And then we use React IE10Next, a library, to translate these to markup to display for users. Would it be acceptable to use Unicode direction markers for mixed direction text? Or do we need to build something custom that will convert these to inline markup, such as the span direction dir equals RTL span, for example? This is from Gregory Beaver.
Adil, can you try this?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, so I feel like we do have a part 3 about localization, and this would be a more relevant one to deal with there. But generally, I would use markup for span dir equals RTL, specifically for content of those translations, because again, what happens if the style is not there? There are also APIs which will actually insert these automatically if you've got variables, but I don't think that's part of the message format specification, if I remember rightly. But yeah, I'd say this is a part 3 kind of question, because we need people who really understand message formats and the different kinds of Bidi implications there.
Right. This is a perfect plug. There's a message format working group within Unicode, and actually one of the issues that's being discussed right now by Addison Phillips, our chair, is how do we support Bidi? So yeah, I think this question, especially a follow-up Bidi session, will greatly inform the design that's happening as we speak for the next version of a message format. Let's see, we might have time for one quick question or not. Let's see. Okay, so if you can answer this really quickly. For scenarios where you have right to left content followed by purely weakly typed characters, have you found any higher level solutions that do not require users to insert control characters or markup? From Caleb White.
Well, the answer is what Ayman basically displayed. Microsoft Word, for example, does a very good job at that. The idea is if you have information from the user that you can keep, use it. So for example, in the case of Microsoft Word, Microsoft Word knows that you are typing this thing with a right to left keyboard, and it uses that information to improve the user experience. The idea is if you have a signal from the user that something is right to left or left to right, although Unicode may call it neutral, use that signal to improve the user experience.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Rich Edit has the same support. So if you look up Rich Edit and you have a client application on Windows, no one has that anymore. Rich Edit is another higher level protocol that recognizes the keyboard language.
Yeah, I would add to that, really think of what is the user's intent. And if the application itself can handle that, the application under the visible level is going to be doing those right to left markers. And then it will control those for the user based upon the user intent. Ideally, you don't want to show those to the users unless they actually need to make fine edits.
All right, thank you all. I think that will be our last question, so it's time to wrap up. So, give me a second. Okay. So here are some bidirectional text resources that we hope you'll find useful. So we have these links from W3C. Obviously, Richard Ishida has worked on these a lot. Also Addison. We have more links. So again, more great resources from W3C. And here's some resources from some of the operating systems that you might come in contact with. And thank you as well for all the work that you've done to make those operating systems support Bidi as well as they do. Now I'd like to acknowledge and thank the organizational members of Unicode that support the work that happens at Unicode, which includes all the things that we talked about with bidirectional text as you heard today. I'd like to announce, save the date for 2 upcoming events. So we will have a third part of the bidirectional text virtual event, which will take place October 1st, 2024. So stay tuned for registration information. Also, the Unicode Technology Workshop, UTW 2024, will take place on October 22nd and 23rd, and it'll be an in-person event hosted at Google in the Bay Area. And now I'd like to thank Adil, Ayman, and Ruzbe for sharing your insights with the answers in the Q&A. Thank you to our logistics team today for all the work that you've done today and leading up to today to make this event successful. And finally, thank you to all of you in attendance for making this event a success. We plan to have the recordings from this event available in the coming weeks. A survey will be sent within 24 hours of this event for any feedback you'd like to share. For general questions regarding Unicode, please visit home.unicode.org. And we hope that you'll stay connected for more information, future events, such as the ones that we've mentioned just now. And please feel free to share any information that we've shared with you today to others that you may know. So have a great rest of your day or evening, and goodbye.